This is the Move to Include podcast. I'm Noelle Evans. Before Conan Gillis was a mathematician or an advocate, he was an 8-year-old kid who just wanted to use his local library. But the aisles were too narrow for his wheelchair, and the building just wasn't built with him in mind. With help from his family, Conan turned that experience into advocacy. Now, Conan is a PhD candidate, and he's had to speak up for himself throughout his education. From K through 12 classrooms with formal support plans to the more self-directed world of higher education. Those experiences helped shape how he thinks about disability, less about the individual and more about the environment around us. In this conversation, we talk about self-advocacy, the role of family, and what it really means to build systems that work for more people. Conan, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
To start, do you mind sharing where your journey with self-advocacy began?
Sure. I think I was about 8 years old, thereabouts. And my local public library in Honeywood Falls, where I'm from, they were building a new one. The old one was not really wheelchair accessible. It was in the sense that I could get in the door. But even when I was young and I had a child-sized wheelchair, I couldn't really navigate through the shelving. And it was really hard for me to even get a book off the shelves. And there were other issues with the building that just made it not exactly inviting for people in wheelchairs. And I was old enough to recognize it, young enough to not really know what to do. My parents, my dad is a incorrigible videographer of my family. Throughout my life, he's been filming us doing various interesting things. Yep. He filmed a video, he called it A Family Trip to the Library, where he put me and my 2 younger siblings in the car. My mom was driving, he was filming, and they were asking us questions as the car was moving, interesting cinematography, about what do you like about the library? Why do you want to go to the library? Questions that you could ask any 8-year-old, and they'd have some sort of interesting answer to give. And then we arrived at the library, and he filmed my siblings and also me going through, checking out a book, having trouble reaching a book, having trouble turning my chair around. My siblings grabbing a book, going through the normal tasks of checking a book out from the library. It was an interesting moment because I was born with my disability and had many health complications throughout my life. My parents had been indispensable advocates for me up to that point. But this was the first time I was ever, from an advocacy perspective, actively engaged in the process.
Was there something in you that changed, whether it was your worldview or how you viewed yourself or, what was going to be the next piece of self-advocacy for you? At 8, I know it's a young age, and you can feel pretty powerful at 8 too, I think, if people show you what you're capable of.
Yeah, I think it sort of set the tone, I think, for a lot of my personal approach to self-advocacy. And to give some context, most of what I need, not all, are physical accommodations that are in some ways, I don't want to say obvious, but easy to see. Once you point them out, it's easy to say, Conan can't get through the shelves. They're too narrow. Of course, they're too narrow. Or Conan can't get in the building. There's no ramp.
They're tangible.
Yeah, tangible. Yeah, they're very tangible. And we as a society do have a somewhat well-developed vocabulary around physical accommodations. At least I've been fortunate that when I have asked, people go, oh yeah, Why don't we have that? Oh yeah, we should have that. And many other people who live in different contexts, different personal contexts, different social contexts, don't have that privilege or that luck or whatever one may wish to ascribe it to. It's probably both. Probably both, if I had to guess. But for me, the notion of, if you point out the issue confidently, you can at least start the conversation to get things done. It's never that simple. It's never been that simple for me. But that video and the conversation it sparked, the key really was starting that conversation, to me, in that context. And a lot of the time when I've done advocacy in high school, I advocated for some handicap access buttons to be put on the main entrance doors, the doors of the main entrance. The predominant response that I got was, we don't have those. We should have those. Why don't we have those? Let's have those.
Okay.
And it taught me the lesson that if you ask it in a certain way, if you ask it politely but confidently, people will listen. And again, I want to reiterate, this is only my experience in one lifetime, in one state, in one region of one state, within one family. So, all of those qualifications have to be borne in mind.
From what you've just been saying, can you share how that's shown up for you in education? Or how you've shown up for yourself, I guess?
Sure. There's a big leap when it comes to disability in education from going to high school and going to college.
Okay.
High school is, both have significant federal and state oversight regulations, requirements for accommodations and such. The high school and before, middle school, elementary school levels, at least in public schooling, you have things like IEPs or 504s. They don't exist in college. It's much less, I suppose one could say, scripted.
Okay.
The requirements are there, but it's not like there's a special teacher who is assigned to you, and you have meetings every so often. At least this was my experience. You have meetings every so often, and the principal or vice principal is required to attend. None of that. It's basically there's an office at your school, which can be well or poorly supported, that's required to give you the accommodations that are required by law, and also whatever other ones your school may deign to grant you. And that really leads into self-advocacy in a major way, because for me to go to college, or for an individual with disabilities to go to college.
You are currently a PhD candidate at Cornell University, right?
Yes. And I did my my bachelor's at Cornell as well. So really the one big jump I've had educationally has been from high school to Cornell. And I'll never forget my first tour of campus. We went there, went on the usual college tour. We were driving home. Dad and I looked at each other and went, nope. Too
Why?
hilly.
Too what?
Hilly.
Okay.
Cornell is in Ithaca, New York. Wonderful town. Beautiful town. Hilly
I hear
town.
it's gorgeous. Yeah. They do say.
They say it's gorgeous,
Many a
and they're
gorge.
right.
Yeah.
It is both gorgeous and so many hills. When you're in a wheelchair looking up at these hills, trying to navigate these hills, it was terrifying. But I applied because I lived 2 hours away, and I was applying to a bunch of schools. Why not? But then I got in, and we were like, oh boy. Now we have to see if this is possible.
It seems like it is.
Yeah, it is.
What has made it possible?
There were three things that came to play. One, is a well-resourced school that's able to make accommodations in other schools. We looked at them, we talked to them, would have not easily been able to make. And the other schools were equally motivated, equally well-intentioned, equally everything. It's just the brute fact of the bottom line.
Okay.
Second was my parents were able to literally take time out of their lives for 9 years to be my nurse half-time so that I could live in Ithaca. And that has not been easy.
Can we explore that a bit? Because I recall you saying before, in terms of like having direct support, that it's pretty limited on how many days and how your family has had to, how you and your family have compensated for that.
Yes. So I'm eligible through New York Medicaid for 24/7 nursing care. I require, medically speaking, 24/7 nursing care. There are not enough nurses that I could find, not through lack of trying. There are not enough nurses in Ithaca who are at least looking for work to support me having 24/7 nursing care. Mm-hmm. We've gotten it right now so that I have nursing care about 4 or 3.5 days a week. My father drives to and from Rochester to Ithaca every week to make up the difference. There have been some weeks where he lives with me all week. There has been only 1 week where I haven't seen him. I love my father. I want to see him once a week. It is good to see him once a week. But I don't like having him make these drives every week. Mm-hmm. And I don't say this with any regret, because he doesn't regret it, I don't believe. He's never voiced it to me, at least. And I'm not going to waste the opportunity he's given me by regretting it, by regretting him giving it to me. I want to make the most of it. But back to your question, if and when my father is no longer able to be involved, it literally makes a difference between having a job and a career and a life or living in a hospital. It could happen to me someday.
Like, what are the options?
Yeah.
If and when? Yeah.
Yeah. And the moment that happens, I lose my autonomy. My mother deserves no less praise. She's kept the family together. And my siblings as well. They had to put up with my blabbermouth for 26 years.
We talked about that transition from high school to college. What about preparing for that transition from completing your PhD to what your career may look like?
The number one constraint is, where do I get a job? Which, pursuing an academic career, many people end up crisscrossing the country. I've applied to jobs in Tennessee, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, California, New York, Massachusetts.
Casting a wide net here. Okay. So you're not limiting yourself based on like where your family is or anything like that, it sounds like, at the moment.
That'll come next.
Okay.
I would say mostly my applying to those jobs is me going la 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 to any issues that will arise.
To any possible issues that may arise.
I
Okay.
completely ignored all of them. I don't know what accommodations will look like. The biggest issue will be, the two biggest issues are issues that a workplace can't really help me with. I need an accessible apartment, and I need nursing.
So these considerations are, that sort of that wider space of, again, like the systemic or structural elements to this, which as I understand it, we talked before about the definition of disability for you, not necessarily sitting with the individual, but within the environment. Is that fair to say? How do you view it?
There are two prevailing concepts of disability. You have the medical model of disability, which is that disability is a individual defect or problem that ought to be cured or mitigated by medical means, and that it's the individual's responsibility to do so with the assistance of the medical system. Then there's the social model of disability, which, to give a concrete example, my legs don't function like yours do, obviously. The medical model of disability would say, oh, Conan's disabled, he can't walk. The social model of disability says, Conan is disabled only insofar as buildings don't have elevators and ramps. It's essentially saying that the disability lies not in the impairment, but in the disconnect between the individual and the society. Being, say, nearsighted is much less of a disability if glasses are universally accepted, provided, whatever. I say much less. It becomes a non-disability, I think. I'm not nearsighted. I don't want to speak for anyone, but
I am, and I can say that, like, wearing the glasses or wearing contacts, like, it's a non-issue with the nearsightedness, yeah.
And the social model would, I think, hold that, okay, if glasses were not socially acceptable, or if you weren't allowed to read anything up close because that was considered some weakness or social failing, that would disable you more than the mere fact that your eyes function differently than mine.
When we have the technology to correct that.
Technology is an important part of it, I think. Corrections, the medical model tries hard to correct things in a sense of make them disappear or make no one have to worry about it.
Correcting vision, I see it, I hear it.
There's no real way to correct my legs. There are ways to make it so that I can interface with society seamlessly, regardless. The social model would, I think, prompt us more to focus on those things. And neither of these things are monoliths. There are people, the medical model was sort of implicit in most of the early 20th century. It became explicit when people who invented the social model figured out that's what the medical system was doing. And this was during the heyday of institutionalization. There are still people alive who survived the Nazi eugenics movements and such. So that's the context where that was described and really pointed at as a major force societally. The social model was developed in response to it. They're not monoliths. People have problems with both of them. For example, the social model doesn't, for example, account for things like pain.
Pain.
It can be argued, not everyone agrees with this, I don't even know if I do. It can be argued that pain can be disabling. It can be it is relevant to the disabled experience, but it isn't the result of society not accommodating something or constructing a barrier for someone. It's there. It's something more immediate. And there are other aspects as well of disability, of the social model, that it has done a lot of good work. And what I just said, I don't mean to discredit it. It's just there are other aspects of disability that people are now starting to think about to extend the social model, or perhaps tweak it or go beyond it. Or it's also an academic lens, and academics love tweaking models.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So
endlessly.
So part of what I'm articulating is literally academic, as far as what it means for me in my daily life or somebody in their daily life. It can be very powerful. The social model was a revelation when it first came out, and I'm sure that there are more revelations to come. Whether what I've articulated is the next revelation, I don't quite know.
Sure. How has it sort of shaped the way that you approach your self-advocacy?
Good question. Every building is a product of a society. And that sounds very broad and philosophical, but I mean, we have French architecture, we have Soviet architecture, we have...
You got brutalism.
Yeah. It's not just random chance that buildings in Paris look different than buildings in Moscow or buildings in New York. There is a social aspect to it.
And a cultural, yeah.
Exactly. When I think about self-advocacy, setting aside what we previously discussed about nursing and these broad systemic issues, I don't have idea, one, on how to fix them. Most of my self-advocacy is focused on the more immediate, tangible ramps, buttons, doors, elevators, etc. Mm-hmm. And with them, it does become really a matter of architecture, and I suppose one could say culture. Mm-hmm. What sort of buildings do we build?
Who do we consider when we build them?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Or even like the sidewalks, the streets. Is this meant for pedestrians? Is this meant for...
When I'm involved in these sorts of conversations, but most of what I've been fortunate enough to be able to do is remind people that they need to consider wheelchair users. And I've been fortunate to be in the spaces and to be listened to in those spaces where that's a relevant question. It's always relevant. Where that question has impact, it results in change.
Okay.
Somewhat.
On a good day, sounds like.
When the planets align and everyone's had their coffee. Yes. When you view advocacy on a large scale, you also have to think about long-term goals. Short-term goals are typically obvious because they will have immediate or close to immediate effects for individuals, either letting them do something new or stopping a problem that's been harming or hindering their lives in some way. Ramps, nursing care, deinstitutionalization, all of these things. Problem, solve it. Hopefully people's lives are better. No one can predict the future, but that's the goal and that's the hope. Mm. The longer-term goal of society of advocacy is what sort of society do we want to create? Do we want for ourselves, for our kids? But I think, if you want to think about advocacy, if you want to take a longer view about it, you do have to start asking yourself those bigger questions. Because otherwise you're just on a treadmill. There will always be one more building to fix. There will always be one more class that's not, one more accommodation to maintain. Where does it all lead? What is the end goal? Mm-hmm. It's perfectly okay to say, I'm doing self-advocacy for myself and my life. Like me, I just want to hang out with friends, do math, and listen to good music. That's my goal. Is that selfish? Probably. But
that sounds great. Well, you can't leave out fun.
It is fun. Yeah. That's my goal. And honestly, I want to make the world a better place. I want to help individuals with disabilities around me and after me. That's why I continue advocating, even when I'm no longer impacted. But I don't know what the long-term goal is. I don't even try to fight for something like that because whatever I propose may not be the right thing. So that's why I tend to focus on the medium to short-term goals. And I think for me, that's the most fulfilling and I think the most useful part of my time. But for people who want to take advocacy to that next level, who actually want to make an impact, and I salute them, I think that's a question they should ask themselves.
Okay.
I don't have an answer for it, but that's what they should have in mind, because if you don't have that, you're just going to be fighting. If you don't have a clear image of what you're fighting for, then you end up just fighting to fight another day, which tragically is what many people are forced to do anyway, but it'd be nicer to have a better goal.
Mm-hmm. Find that from within yourself, maybe, too. Yeah. Thank you so much, Conan.
Thank you for having me.
That was Conan Gillis. For more information on self-advocacy, visit our website at movetoinclude.org. You can support this podcast by subscribing or following wherever you listen. Leave us a review and share us on social media. We're at Move to Include. This podcast is produced by WXXI Public Media.